turn this off.
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. So again, I don't think that's what we want to do.
So, Mary, no one.
So do you want this speaker off? Okay. Okay, I guess we're okay. No, I don't like that.
Hi, this is Libby Carnahan with UF-IFAS Extension. Can those of you online hear me? Does anyone want to say in the chat or Q&A? Having some technical difficulties on site. So right now we have Lisa Foster available to answer Q&A. So she is the flood. I don't hear you. I got muted, and so I'm not sure if I'm being muted on purpose, but I was trying to help them pitch it here. So, so yeah, we'll see if my mic stays on. I'm Libby Carnahan. I'm the UF-IFAS Extension Sea Grant Agent in Pinellas County. So I work on marine and coastal issues. I think they might be okay. I'm not sure. Okay, well, we'll see. So until I get cut off, I will talk.
I think we're good. Can you hear me, Libby?
I can hear you, Lisa.
Okay, fantastic. So Mary, I think, is saying that we're ready to go here. I'm not sure where we left off talking. Were you able to hear the rest of the conversation?
You and Dan have been the only speakers I was able to hear online. I'm not sure if anyone else heard more. And I'm at home online.
Oh, okay, I see. All right, well, Joe, I believe already spoke about the preparedness and all the points from Mercy Management. You want to nod, Joe, if that's true? Okay, so let's see. And were you able to hear Barry at all about the insurance, or should I recap some insurance things?
For Barry.
I didn't hear Barry.
Okay, so we did not hear Barry. So Barry is there live, so he's probably having audio issues to all of us out here in Zoom land. So as far as the insurance goes, the first thing you want to do is check with your insurance agent to find out what you have covered. Homeowners insurance and flood insurance are two completely different things. Flood insurance itself, it has two parts. There's a contents part and there's a structure part. So you want to check and make sure that you have what you need. If you're a renter,
Lisa, I'd like to start that right there. Can you hear me? Because of all the technical difficulties, we're going to start. So, all right. I don't know if we've got them solved. Off the speaker inside the room here.
Dan, can you start over?
Just, yeah.
Sure. Welcome, everyone, and we'll get this squared away yet. The biggest thing about an approaching hurricane is you need information to protect not only yourself, but your family. And so where do you get that information if that hurricane is 7 days away from making some impacts in your community? And the way our warning system works in this country is the National Weather Service. We're sort of behind the scenes. We take the Hurricane Center forecast, which is the big picture. We paint all the small scale details for your community, and we communicate that to decision makers that are on this panel tonight and to others so that they can make informed decisions. Now, emergency management, they prepare for, respond to, and recover from the event. And so that is our #1 customer of the National Weather Service. We also work with the private sector, your local TV meteorologists, your radio stations, your newspapers. They are the ones that are responsible for communicating the threat to the public. They have the smart device applications. If you notice, the National Weather Service does not have an app. We leave that to the private sector, and they've done a very good job on that. So find a local app that you like. There are national media, but their customers are all across the country. We prefer that you look toward your local media. They have the information directly from my office in Ruskin and also from local emergency management. So they have the complete picture and they can communicate how to protect yourself and your family. We had 30 storms last year, and we forecast 17 to begin with. Nobody in their right mind would have forecast 30, and we did. We got it. And poor Louisiana, they had 5 storms. If that Bermuda high pressure system that was protecting Florida last year just moved a little bit further to the east, those 5 storms would have been over Florida. We would have had one after another all year long. And as it turned out, we got really lucky. West Central Florida had absolutely nothing until Tropical Storm Eta came by in November and flooded parts of Pinellas County, and of course the wind and all that other stuff we're going to talk about. So Eta was the 29th storm of the year. Then we had one more after that. We have a tropical, well, it's a non-tropical low pressure system near Bermuda right now that is forecast to go into warmer water and take on some tropical characteristics. We're not going to have to worry about that one. But it does show that the tropics are just starting to heat up, and we're going to have to pay attention to the forecast. So if you're walking by a TV set and you see the on-air TV meteorologist getting excited, pointing at something in the Atlantic or the Caribbean, watch what they have to say, because that means something that can impact us could possibly be approaching. We use the forecast cone of uncertainty. You've all hopefully have seen that before. And that cone is based on the error in our forecast over the last 5 years. So it's been getting skinnier and skinnier every year. However, that cone only tells you where the center of the storm is likely to be. It doesn't tell you how big that storm is. So we know hurricanes can be the size of Texas. So, you know, while we care about the center, we really care about the impacts that we're going to have here in West Central Florida. So don't focus on the category of storm. Oh, it's a category 1 or 2. Focus on the impacts that you are receiving from your local media. And that'll give you a much better picture on how the actions that you have to take to protect yourselves and your family. With that, I am going to turn it over to our next speaker.
Hi there. I'm Lisa Foster, the floodplain administrator for Pinellas County. I believe I'm the one that's supposed to take over at this point to talk to you all about flood risk and where you're located. You all are on a barrier island on a peninsula of Pinellas County, which is on a peninsula of Florida. We have a subtropical climate here, so we are definitely susceptible to tropical weather events. As we just saw with Tropical Storm Eta, that was not a very big storm, and we had some significant impacts. I got some data from FEMA about a week and a half after the storm hit, and there were already almost 1,000 structures with flood insurance claims on it through the National Flood Insurance Program. So that doesn't account for any of the damages that occurred that insurance claim through the NFIP hadn't been filed, maybe through a private insurance company or somebody with no insurance at all. So there was definitely significant damage. We saw it along the Southern Barrier Islands, mostly south of the Narrows, all the way down to St. Pete Beach, and then over by Shore Acres and in Upper Tampa Bay, where the water tended to pile up in Oldsmar area, and then down off of Gandy, we had some significant flooding. As Stan said, don't look at what category it is, look at what the impacts are going to be. Tropical Storm Eta was a 3 to 6 foot storm surge, and we saw the impacts of that with that very small storm that happened to come with high tide. You can look at the high tide predictions on our website if you go to floodmaps.pinellascounty.org, and I am going to get crazy here. Nope, I can't share my screen. I was going to show you the map service, but we have a flood map service center online, and you can look at all the different flood hazards on there, from storm surge, shear evacuation zones, sea level rise projections, to the FEMA flood map data. And pretty soon we'll have some additional storm surge data added to that. And I guess just make sure you have your insurance policies in place. Make sure that you know what your flood risk is. There are some pretty low-lying areas. We saw where those were with Tropical Storm Eta. So know your risk and be prepared. Also be prepared to recover after a flood event. Know where you're going to go. Know how you're going to get back up on your feet afterwards. And with that, I'll pass it to the next speaker. I don't know if I'm interrupting somebody here, but just to let you know that we out in Zoom land cannot hear you all there in City Hall.
Okay, I'll unzoom myself and okay, Joe's going to talk to the preparation on our side. Go ahead, Joe.
Can you hear me now?
We hear you with a pretty good echo.
Is this better? Okay. Turn the speakers off in the room here. So, thank you. Okay.
They can hear us, we can talk about it.
Yeah, that's the thing here. We don't need these at all. Right. When we did it before.
Mary Burrell, would you like us to fill the Zoom land?
If you're able to let us share the screen, I can show up the map service to all of our Zoom participants and go through the hurricane guide with them.
Can you guys give Lisa
Can you hear me
Foster
now?
some control of her?
Lisa?
Yes, I hear you.
Yes.
Yes, you're good. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. She says, is it loud and clear?
Yes, perfect. Go.
Turn your speaker on. Okay. Well, thank you. You're looking good, Dan. So there are three things that emergency management asks you to be prepared for. That's to know your risk, make a plan, and stay informed. Know your risk out here in the Barrier Islands is knowing about the dangers of stormwater, storm surge, okay? But I would suggest as well too, as we saw with Irma, that, what would you do without no power for 2 weeks? What would you do without no water service for 2 weeks? What would you do without any sewer service as well? So those are the type of things that you need to think about. And then what we ask you to do is make a plan for those items. And be prepared for 7 days of that. As we try to work, all the crews are trained and get ready to return these things to service. You need to have personal responsibility and make a plan for 7 days to have a kit, to-go kit, or a stay-home kit if you can, and then take care of your family members and your pets as well too. So just making a plan for these items that you're at risk for. And then stay informed. We want you to stay informed using our Alert Pinellas notification system. And you can have 5 different addresses that you can put inside Alert Pinellas. And this way, if we geo-target any type of notifications about hazards in there, you are able to get notified with that. We also have a mobile app called Ready Pinellas. One of the most important things I think everybody should have is a radio, battery-operated radio, or a hand-cranked radio, because it was up in Bay County and we lost all communications for weeks with the community, and getting out to our partners 6:20 a.m. and 9:70, we're able to get out our messages where disaster recovery centers are, where insurances villages are as well too. So there's just 3 things, knowing your risk, and I think you all know that it's water out here. And of course, the higher the storms, wind, having the envelope of your house protected is very important. Having a plan for those items and staying informed, and planning ahead. If you're going to leave, go out of town, leaving early, you don't have to wait for the evacuation order. You can go ahead and do that because you know what traffic is like. We don't have a gas shortage. There's not a supply shortage, but there is a resupply problem when everybody's consuming gas and topping off and things like that. So making sure you have gas if you are going to leave is something else that I would suggest as well. So stay informed, have a plan, be prepared.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody can hear me. You okay? Okay, good. All right, well, thank you very much, Barry. Barry, I think we want to talk about insurance again, if you bear with us a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Can you all hear me on Zoom? You can? Okay. So what we were originally talking about is mitigating our risk and exposures. One of the first things I would recommend that anybody do who has I know you, I shouldn't turn this on. Okay. So anybody that in a single family home needs to consider getting a wind mitigation inspection. If you live in a condominium, make sure your condominium association does that. And that wind mitigation inspection will show you what you can do to your home. And we're primarily talking about single family homes here, but what you can do to your home to maximize or minimize your damage by maximizing what you can do to your home, especially the roof. It'll tell you what you need to do to your roof other than replacing it or getting a hip roof. And the other item is to consider high impact windows. Both of those items, the high impact windows and the wind mitigation, will maximize any potential credits that you can receive on your homeowner's insurance. Okay, so it's a win-win. You maximize your credits, you minimize your damage. The other thing we need to do is look at, your insurance. You got to buy a homeowner's policy. The policy may include wind or may exclude wind. So it could go either way, and that's okay. Some carriers will package it with the wind. Some carriers will only write wind, and you have to write a separate homeowner policies for the other perils. So you want to make sure you understand the dwelling limit. You have 300,000 on the home, you have $500,000 on the home. Make sure that value properly represents what it's going to cost to replace your home in a total loss. So that's your decision, your call, and of course, or your lender. They're going to want to look at that too. Also, an issue that comes up a lot is loss of use. And this is the type, this comes with your homeowner's insurance or your wind policy, and it's going to be 10% or 20% of the dwelling value, and that's the dollar amount that's going to pay for you to live somewhere else where your home is being repaired or renovated or replaced from the damage. Okay, a loss of use is going to be included. Make sure you understand how much you get. They don't give you number of days, it's a dollar amount. So it's going to be 10 or 20% of the dwelling limit on your policy. So if you have 300,000 and you got 10%, you got 30 grand. Okay, so you want to ask that, what's the loss of use? The next, so that's the wind. That's the wind policy on your homeowners. The other peril is flood. And that's a separate policy. It's going to be underwritten by the National Flood Insurance Program, which is under FEMA. Or you could possibly purchase the policy through the private market. Not so much right now, but you have to ask if that's available, and it'll probably be a Lloyd's policy. It can provide better coverage at a lower premium, but it's usually not available for most exposures on the barrier islands, but it might be. You have to ask. Flood insurance does not provide loss of use, and it's only going to pay for what gets wet. I know there's been a lot of issues in Madeira Beach. I live in Reddington. We had a lot of issues, also a lot of claims from Ada. But I can tell you, all the claims got paid very well by the claims adjusters. I would recommend, so there's not an insurance company that comes out on your flood claim. It's going to be an adjuster, and it's going to be from one of the servicing carriers that writes the FEMA policy. The most success I've had in my career with flood claims is with Bankers Insurance. They're right here in Pinellas County in St. Pete. They adjusted most of my claims in Ada, and they were unbelievable. The other servicing carrier is Assurant. They are also adjusted some of our claims, and they did a fabulous job. Those are the only two that I can speak for, but that's who I use. That's who we use at Essentia, and the claims were very well handled. So again, homeowners, wind, flood, rising water. And it's got to be a rising water, and it's going to be a 2-acre area that gets flooded before this kicks in. It can't just be yours and your neighbor's house gets flooded. Then that won't be a flood issue. That will be a flood event under the NFIP policy. It's got to be the entire neighborhood that gets flooded. Okay, so and that'll be easy to determine. And obviously, Ada was one that we had a massive amount of damage. It was the first one in my 35-year career in the Tampa Bay area. We hadn't had a storm that did that kind of damage since Elena in 1985. So that's the last time my house got flooded, and most of the areas. Some other storms will affect some other neighborhoods, but again, we hadn't seen this widespread damage throughout Pinellas County, especially from a November storm. So that's how we can mitigate, doing the mitigation process and buying the proper insurance. Thank you.
Mary, you need to unmute.
Thank you, Mayor. So can you hear me out there on Zoom?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So just so you know a little bit about the process, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office controls access back onto the barrier islands from the mainland side. So after you leave the barrier island, in order to come back, you'll have to come back through a checkpoint from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. And the most efficient and effective way to do that is to obtain a pass to come back on, an emergency access pass to come back onto the island. So at the Police Department Indian Shores, we have them at the front desk. You come in, you bring your driver's license, show that you're a resident, or that you own property on the barrier island. They issue you an access pass, which has a barcode scan on it. So when you come back, when it's time to come back and you come to the checkpoint, the sheriff's deputy will scan your pass. If you have it, it will pop up in the computer so they know you are a resident of the barrier island and allow you to come back in. So that does a couple different things for all of us out here, and that allows us to know who's coming and going on and off the island. So it allows us to control people coming back in after that don't live here. Okay, we don't want people coming back on the island just to look around to see what's going on if they don't live here. We certainly don't want looters, and we don't want things like that to happen. So one of the best ways is for you to go ahead of time and obtain a pass so that you know that you have a way back onto the island. It speeds up the process a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to have to produce your driver's license. They're going to have to verify that you actually are a resident of the barrier island in order to let you back on. So that's probably the best way to do that.
Thank you, Captain. I appreciate that. One of the things that I'm sorry, when we come back, we want to know what we're coming back to and how it should be made safe. But speaking of getting back home, I think I'd like to have Megan Wepford give us an idea of what Public Works does to prepare for that. So,
sure. Good evening, everybody. As Joe had talked about earlier, the most important thing is to protect your home. By protecting your home, you need to ensure that you have either shutters or plywood to be able to secure those doors and those windows. And as we all know, there's shortages right now, so get those shutters as soon as possible and make sure that you have them in the event of an emergency coming. Also, it's very important to prepare your yard. Make sure that you have all your trees trimmed. In Madeira Beach, we do brush pickup on Wednesdays, every Wednesday. We have a 8x4 limit that we pick up. If you're outside, just check with your local municipality and see when they do the brush pickup. Also check your roof straps. Those are very important. During Irma, we saw quite a few places lose their roofs. So back to you, Mayor.
great. Well, thank you very much. I think part of that also is preparing anything you have in the way of hazardous materials. I think the first thing we'd like to, maybe we can have Chief Kilpatrick. Jim, do you have any comments on hazardous materials and other safety issues?
So, as first responders, we're the ones that are going into those homes typically after a storm with rising waters. Those chemicals that you have in your home that you use for cleaning or gasoline that you have for your generator, your lawnmowers, those become hazards. So if you have chemicals or if you have petroleum products, cleaning products that you're not going to be using, it'd be best to get rid of those prior to a storm event, prior to hurricane season. I know the county has a solid waste site where they have where you can bring those things periodically. They also have a mobile event where hazardous materials can be dropped off. We've had those at the St. Pete Beach at the fire station periodically. You just want to eliminate any of those hazards that are, probable with rising waters. Along with that, similar to what Megan was speaking to with rising waters, any obstacles that would be created by rising waters, patio furniture, outdoor grills, things like that. You want to bring those inside so that we won't be dealing with those when we're trying to get to you, to rescue you, to get into your home, to search or do our jobs. So just be careful to get rid of those hazardous chemicals when you can prior to an event.
Thank you, Chief. I think, Joe, I wonder if you could address the situation when we have an evacuation. What time do we have when we call an evacuation? Exactly, how should people respond and what should they consider?
Sure thing. So for evacuations, we evacuate, as I mentioned, on storm surge. And what we're looking at, working with the National Hurricane Center and the Tampa Bay National Weather Service, we're looking at how much storm surge we have. So if we're going to get something from 0 to 11 feet, that's an A evacuation, B up to 15 feet, and so on. So when we get that amount, we're looking at that evacuation order that we want to call for safety. And then from that, we run some models to see how long it takes to evacuate each one of those at-risk populations. So for an A evacuation, we're looking at 18 to 20 hours. And we consider, when the news cycle is, daylight timing, and things like that. So we could do it well in advance of 18, 20 hours because we want to make sure people have enough time. One, you can hear our message, right? So we're not going to do it ever at 2 a.m. in the morning. We're going to do it, at least before at least by 9 o'clock or so we get on the 10 o'clock days, but probably even earlier. So we call it at an appropriate time. Of course, we go before the board, get their blessing for the evacuation order. That affects everybody in the county. And then we use our time model to see how long it takes to evacuate, and then we back it up. So an E-evacuation, God forbid, the biggest one that we have is some 52 hours. So we would call it, it'll be beautiful outside 2 days ahead of time, but you need that much time to get everybody off out of the harm's way that's in the county. And what we're asking you to do is just get out of the storm surge. So there's still places in Pinellas County that are non-storm surge parcels and residences and hotels that you can go to. But in a bigger evacuation, you may have to go farther. But we always ask you to go tens of miles, not hundreds of miles. And we always have a start, and because of these timings, we always have a start and end time. And that end time is when we think, working with our weather service partners, that the storm is going to start to deteriorate quickly in our area here. So we're expecting tropical storm force winds within hours of the end time of that evacuation time. So you need to get to your safe place by the end of the evacuation time. That's a balancing act for businesses because we want our businesses and gas stations to stay open for everybody who's evacuating so they get their supplies. Because we know people wait to the last minute as long as possible. But they have employees too that are in harm's way. So they got to balance that out with closing early enough to get themselves and their employees out of harm's way, but provide you the services. But they're supposed to be out of the evacuation area as well too by the end of the evacuation time. And if it's an order, it is an order. Then they might not come out and arrest you, but they're going to insist that you at least evacuate. We ask that you do. And don't evacuate up. If you're in a condo, evacuating up is not an answer. It's actually more harm's way. You're up higher. Your elevators are not working. Power comes out. Heat rises. Your car's down there as well too. And then, as Lieutenant mentioned, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office has the Barrier Islands hang tag program as well to protect the Barrier Islands. Setting those protective areas as well too. And then everybody gets out, then we watch for the impacts to come back, hopefully not as long. We don't know how long it takes for each storm to go. And then we give it all clear, but we open the county back up through the Sheriff's Office where all the roads are clear and it's safe to travel. So you may see that it's safe. We might open up the exterior of the county, but we may not open up the Bear Islands if they took an impact. Okay? And we got to do more work there. So certain areas could be closed off. But we'll have law enforcement out there, making sure that you're not getting into harm's way. And of course, if roads are still flooded, turn around, don't drown, don't drive through flooded roads. We're a little bit blessed here where all the water does drain out to the bays, but there could be flooded areas. And if the power's out too, and the traffic lights are out, and we saw this with Irma, it's a four-way stop. Please, everybody stop at an intersection with no traffic lights working. It was so dangerous for law enforcement out there, and it's a difficult job as well too for some of the major intersections. It takes 4 officers to be out there to control the traffic, and even with them out there, they were blowing right through the intersection. It's just unsafe. I just want to remind everybody, traffic lights are out any time of the year. It's a 4-way stop. Please stop, check, and proceed. But we're in constant contact with the Sheriff's Office, NRC partners, and we'll try to open the county up as quickly as possible. But the evacuation is set by the timing of how long it takes to get the population out. Pay attention to that end time. That's your safe time to get to your safe place. And then we'll do our best. We have crews standing by, staging to clear the roads and get you back into your homes.
Okay. Thank you very much. We do have the benefit today of having a commissioner from Reddington Shores, Mike Robinson, who's here, and he has the distinct, the credibility of someone who lived through Katrina back in 2005. So, Mike, can you give us a little bit of insight, having experienced it once?
Thank you, Mayor. So in my previous life, I was the state police director, state fire marshal, emergency management director for the state of Michigan. And tornadoes and floods and
Mayor, it looks like he dropped off. He froze up and now it looks like he's dropped off. So maybe we'll come back to him.
Looks like we're getting Mike squared away so that everyone can hear him. So are you all set now? Oh, we're going to go on to the next section then. I guess. Oh, maybe we're not.
just walk over and stand up behind my friend Captain Smith. Are we unmuted?
Unmute him, yes.
Okay, thank you. So as I started to say, in my earlier life, I was the state police director, state fire marshal, emergency management director for the state of Michigan. And tornadoes and fires and floods in Michigan were nothing compared to what I experienced in New Orleans with the Department of Homeland Security during Katrina. I can't impress upon people more the importance of heeding those evacuation warnings. After the storm, we evacuated over 30,000 people through the airport. There wasn't a single one of them that wished that they had not evacuated. They all wished they would have left and should have, because, and I don't need to be morbid, but in this whole process, there were 50 people that didn't leave New Orleans that way. They were in the temporary morgue that we had downstairs. You know, the hurricane delivered 17 feet of water at street level where I live. And a lot of people say, well, gee, that was because the levee broke and that was a problem. But let me tell you the story about the executive assistant I had who lived in Biloxi, who was standing at her front door talking on her phone to her father when she saw the storm surge coming across her lawn. By the time she made it to the back door of her house and managed to fight the door open, the water was almost up to her waist. It was up to her neck by the time she grabbed a tree branch in her backyard and climbed on the roof of a garage next door. It happens fast. And it's too late to wish you hadn't left. There were countless people in New Orleans who didn't leave because they had pets. They didn't want to leave their pet, and their plan didn't include what to do with their pet. So they stayed in their home with their pet, and as the water rose, climbed into the attic where it was over 100 degrees, hot, and they stayed there too long. On the Saturday, hurricane happened on a Monday. On Saturday, we had 150 helicopter landings at the airport an hour that were still taking people off from rooftops. There was a lot of talk about people shooting at helicopters. They weren't shooting at helicopters. They were shooting to get their attention because they had been sitting on their rooftop for almost a week, run out of water and 100-degree weather, waiting for someone to rescue them. Again, please heed the warnings. Please have a plan in place. Know where you, your family, and pets are going to go should an evacuation be ordered. The problem that most people talk about with evacuations and when it goes bad, it's because they didn't have a plan. Now's the time to plan. Now's the time to be prepared. Thank you.
Very sobering comments, Mike. Thank you very much. Something we all need to listen to. Okay, so now we say the evacuation period is over. Of course, we're on the beaches here, so we're all in zone A, so we're gone. We're somewhere in a safe place off the islands. But the storm's getting worse. I guess, do we still have Dan Noah on here, I believe?
We do.
There he is. Okay, Dan, thank you. But can you give us an idea what to expect while we're gone?
Sure. With Hurricane Katrina, we had over 1,200 fatalities.
I think
if we get,
oh, there you go. Go ahead.
If Hurricane Katrina, we had over 1,200 fatalities, and if we get a major hurricane into Tampa Bay, it's not going to be a good day for us. And where did those fatalities occur? 9 out of 10 U.S. fatalities are due to water. Half are due to storm surge. 1 out of 4 are due to flooding rain. If you can avoid water, you have just increased your survivability in that hurricane greatly. So that's the first thing, is to avoid all water. If you had a fish tank that's 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet, and you filled it with salt water, it's going to weigh 1,700 pounds. And if that fish tank was moving at you at 20 miles an hour and you tried to stop it, what's going to happen? Now imagine you have millions of fish tanks pushing against a single family home on the barrier islands. That's enough power to wipe parts of the barrier island clean. So forget about staying in your attic. Flowing water over the barrier island can just wipe it completely clean. And the debris and the leftover water after the surge is going to make search and recovery very hard to impossible. So if you are asked to evacuate, please do so. Have a plan in advance. So what's it going to be like? If the eye wall misses you, you're going to have the rain bands. So you're going to have a period of stormy weather, then it might calm down, a period of stormy weather, calm down, so on and so on. But what if the eye wall, if you're unlucky enough to be in that eye wall? Well, if we had a major hurricane come from Cancun, Mexico to Tarpon Springs, and that eye wall makes landfall in Tarpon, what's going to happen is about 12 hours or more before landfall, you're going to have above normal tides that can put 1 to 2 feet of water across the entire barrier island. So now it's going to be hard to drive off the island. And that's 12 hours before the eye wall occurs. When that eye wall gets closer, that's when the maximum surge is going to be. And water over the barrier island could be 15 feet or higher. And that is more than enough to wash away a single family home. Even if the home is on stilts, the debris in the water is going to run into those stilts and can collapse that home. So if you're not afraid of storm surge, become afraid of storm surge. And then if you go to, say, Brandon on the eastern suburbs of Tampa, be afraid of flooded roads because flooding rain kills 1 out of 4 people. And we evacuate our water here with a lot of ditches. It's real easy to drive into a ditch or across a bridge that might have been washed out, but it was hidden by the water. And then the wind comes. The wind is what knocks down all the trees, the power lines. You're going to be without power for maybe weeks, depending on where you live. And it's going to be hot. It's humid. If you want to know what it's going to be like this weekend, I want you to turn off your power and your water and try to live in your house. It'll be miserable. So your hurricane kit isn't to survive the hurricane. It's to survive the aftermath of the hurricane. And you don't want to be caught without one. That's it for me. We'll pass it along.
Great. Thank you very much. I guess the next thing we really need to think about is what happens when we're gone. What is law enforcement doing? And I guess Captain Smith, I think you'd be the one to respond to that one.
Thank you, Mayor. So before the storm, we'll be out on the road, patrolling the back streets, the neighborhoods, trying to get people to leave for evacuation. We want everybody to leave and evacuate the barrier islands. There are some people who choose not to do that. So we'll be out on the road and we'll try to take note of where those people live, where they've stayed, and what streets, so that afterwards we can go back and see what's going on there. But we try to get people to leave. There will come a time when the wind speed gets so high that emergency services will come off the road. Police, fire, and EMS will come off the road. You will not see them anymore. And you will not see them until the storm is over and it's safe to come back out. That's why we want you to evacuate. Because once we come off the road and we're not coming back out, that's when the 911 calls come. That's when folks decided it was the wrong thing to do to stay. The wind is now 100 miles an hour and the rain is driving and it's howling. And so you're dialing 911 because you really don't want to be there anymore. That's heartbreaking because nobody can come out in those conditions and get you out of there. So that's why we really emphasize on the barrier islands to evacuate. We will come back out when the storm is over and the wind is down, and it's usually somewhere around 50 miles an hour where we'll come off the road. Probably sooner for things like big fire trucks and square ambulances because they can't take the wind. So you need to know that's what we're doing. We will be out there, even if you evacuate, we'll be out there until it's safe. As long as it's safe, we'll be out there patrolling the neighborhoods and watching your property and paying attention. But we do encourage to evacuate because at some point we all have to come off the road. So just be aware of that. And we will get back out as soon as possible to check those areas for damage and check for folks that stayed. So that's what we'll be doing.
Thank you, Captain. I guess we've got a similar question of Chief Kilpatrick. What is the fire department doing during this time?
Very similar. Pre-storm, we're out responding to calls. Online, service, medical calls. At some point, though, conditions are unsafe, we will be standing down. To our quarters, wherever that may be, typically for us, but there will be a point that we will not respond to calls. If the point after the storm, we show the steps
Mayor, we are unable to hear the chief.
There is going to be a period of time where there will be no service. You'll be on your own. Option is to evacuate.
Is there anything, if someone stays, that what can people do to stay safe if they did not evacuate?
If they don't evacuate, they should secure their home, go to the innermost part of their home, stay away from windows and doors. If the home is breached, I turn off the power, stay out of floodwaters. Those are unsafe. But again, as Mr. Robinson said, have a plan. You don't want to be here during a storm. You don't want to be here after a storm. You want to have a plan in place that you have a safe place to go, and then come back when conditions are right. So,
great, thank you. Next, I believe we've got Fire Chief Bars from Treasure Island. Is he here? Or is he?
Right here.
Oh, okay, there he is.
Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Can you address that for us?
Sure, absolutely. And, we have a saying in emergency management, hide from the wind and run from the water. Like Joe mentioned earlier, that's so important. Travel 10 miles if you're in an evacuation zone and get away from the water. Dan Noah stated too that, 1 in 4 or 4 fatalities for every one is caused by the water. It's just so hazardous. We had a situation in Treasure Island where during Ada, folks were trying to come down Gulf Boulevard and we had about 2 feet of standing water. The thing is, a car or an SUV will float in about a foot. So we had several cars stalled out and we were in high water vehicles making our way to the south part of the island to assess damage and take care of emergency calls. And it wasn't even in the height of the storm. About 11 o'clock at night. And there were folks that we pulled out of their vehicles And they were very concerned about their cars, but we had to tell them, you know, you drove into standing water and now your car is stalled and flooded. It's basically totaled, and we're worried about your life at this point. So many hazards, debris underwater you can't see. You don't know if the road is washed out. You may think you know where you are, but it's dark and rainy and stormy, and you can turn a corner right into a ditch or off a bridge, drive into a canal. Earlier in my career, I almost walked into a canal, making a rescue in floodwaters. I happened to look left and see davits parallel to me, and I thought, wait a minute, that's a weird thing in a street. I was about to step into a canal with a victim on my back that I was rescuing. So it just doesn't pay to be out in floodwaters. So definitely, you know, run from those storm waters.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Very, very good advice. Okay, now, you know, the hurricane's passed. I guess, Megan, can you give us some insight as to what Public Works is going to be doing during that period of time once the storm is gone and then get going again?
As soon as Public Works is able to get onto the island, our main priority is to work with the Sheriff's Department and also our fire department to ensure that we're clearing the roads for any type of recovery responses or emergency vehicles to gain access. This can take time. As we know, usually there's a lot of debris in the road. We have to work our way through the city from north to south is usually what we do. During Ada, we divided the city into 3 parts in conjunction with the fire department just to assess damage and to make sure we covered everything. With the debris removal, dependent on the category of the hurricane, we will always have our contractor on standby. For the city of Madeira Beach, again, just place all of your items at the curb and bear with us. We'll get to them as soon as we can. For us, there's no need to call. We know it's there and we'll get to it as soon as possible.
Thank you. Thank you. Chief Kilpatrick, what about the emergency responders during that period of time?
Post-storm, our priority is 911 calls. Generally, the call volume goes up exponentially after a storm when people get eyes on their properties and they see the conditions outside. We run a lot of calls on hazards, wires down. In St. Pete Beach, we had a few electrical injuries based on people being outside post-storm with wires down, generators running, some generators plugged in and backfeeding into lines. Even though there's no power coming from the power company, some people were plugging generators into the system and backfeeding through lines. There were children playing in St. Pete Beach, actually, that ran across a live line. So just be careful after the storm with a generator. You don't want to be running that inside. You don't want to be backfeeding it through the system. You definitely want to not use it in wet conditions. So be particularly careful after the storm when you think things are over. There's still hazards out there. So.
Thank you, Kat. The storm's gone. You know, people think it's time to go back home. Captain Smith, could you address, why people wouldn't want to do that and how they should be careful?
Certainly, Mayor. One of the first things that will happen after the storm is damage assessment. So the bridges, first of all, need to be inspected before folks can drive back and forth to Barrier Islands on re-entry. We'll also be out along with our public works folks assessing damage in the town. The accessibility of roads, like the chief said, downed wires, things that are a hazard to people coming back on the Barrier Island. Depending on the amount of damage that's on the Barrier Island may depend on how quickly or if at all folks are allowed back on the Barrier Island. So we'll assess that damage and see. In some cases, they may be allowed back on for a brief period of time to take a look and put eyes on your property, and then you'll be asked to leave again. That all depends on the amount of damage that's done and where the storm came from, whether it was rising water, wind damage, and how excessive it is. There will be certainly damage assessments going on for a long period of time. Places will not be inhabitable. Some places will, some places won't. You know, power, water, utilities is all going to be a factor in that. But and certainly we will be out there, even if residents are not allowed, we will be out there making sure that people that don't belong on the island are not on the island. So.
Right. Thank you, Captain. Now, once we get back to our homes, what happens next? I wonder if we got still have Lisa Foster still on here so that we could, find out what we should do first once we get back. Lisa?
Sure. So like Captain Smith said, all the public works departments are going to be working to inspect bridges, and then can you hear me now?
I hear you.
Okay. So like Captain Smith said, all of the public works departments, the counties and the cities will be working together, make sure all the bridges are inspected, give them the okay. Then the sheriff, of course, will work on letting people back in with the reentry passes and things like that. And the police, public works, even the building departments will be out doing damage assessments and things like that. Once it's all clear for people to return back over to the islands, when you get home, take pictures. And when you think you've taken enough pictures, take more pictures. Make sure that you file your insurance claim right away. Once you get that claim opened, you can work on compiling that list of losses. If it's flood insurance, you're going to have 2 separate lists, one for the structure, one for your contents, and make sure that you're in touch with your insurance agent, your insurance adjuster at all times. Make sure you're in touch with your building department as well. You need to get those wet items out quickly so that they don't mold. If it's not a bad storm and you can salvage the property, then you'll want to get those walls cut out. Most people hire somebody to do that. Again, with the photos, even photos of the installation behind your drywall or behind your plaster is very important to get so that the insurance company knows what you had in there. They won't get out there probably for several days, maybe longer, depending on the size of the storm. So make sure that you're photographing absolutely everything, documenting everything that you can, salvaging what you can, and obviously working to pile all the debris and things that needs to be removed on the side of the house for the city or county, depending on where you're situated, to pick up with the debris removal system that we have in place. We all have contractors on standby, so when this happens, if it's bad enough that we need to do a debris removal, we can activate that. Again, the photos, file the insurance policy, make sure you get the wet things out. And when you hire a contractor, make sure you're hiring a licensed contractor. Sometimes after these events, there are some unscrupulous individuals that may try to take advantage of people. So please make sure that you look at the PCCLB website and hire somebody that is licensed, and make sure that you are working with your building departments. The emergency management department also posted an app where people could report their damage last time. One of the issues with getting funding after the event was because it just wasn't a bad enough storm with Tropical Storm Eta. There just wasn't enough damage. And when you have a smaller flood event like that, it's very, very difficult to document the damage. So unless the citizens help us say what was damaged, we can't put in the application that shows the true damage to FEMA. And I mentioned earlier, possibly when you all couldn't hear what anybody was saying, but I mentioned about a week and a half after the storm, I did get claims data from FEMA, and there were about 1,000 properties that had filed claims from Tropical Storm Eta about a week and a half after the storm hit. So there were likely more claims made after that, and more claims made through private insurers, and then a number of people that had damage that weren't insured as well. And the PCCLB is the Pinellas County Licensing and Construction Board, and we have links to that from our website, pinellascounty.org. So you can find it there, and you can look up a contractor on that site. And unless I left anything out that you can think of, Mayor, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Thank you. I think the next thing when we're dealing with insurance, I think Barry, you let us know from an insurance perspective what we need to be thinking about.
Yes, I will. Can you hear me on the Zoom? No.
Are you muted?
You want me on mute?
You're not muted.
You can hear me okay? The first thing I want to do is, there was a great question about flood insurance that came through a Q&A concerning about private flood. And the question was, if I leave the NFIP, go into private flood, and then decide to come back to the government funded sponsored program, can I? Yes, you can, but it may not be at the same rate. You may lose your grandfathering. So before you leave, now this is if you've been in the NFIP and you decide to move out. If before you leave, ask your agent, will I lose my grandfathering? Now, what we're trying to do when Congress finally addresses the long-term flood issues and how we're going to deal with flood, they keep kicking the can down the road every 3 or 6 months. What we're trying to get Congress to do is to eliminate this grandfathering issue so people can move in and out and not get harmed financially. So you need to ask that question. It was a great question. You need to make sure to do that before you move from NFIP to private. Now, when after the storm, I'm assuming and hope that you have evacuated. And when you come back, you've got an obligation to mitigate further damage. You've got an obligation in your insurance contracts to do that. They want you to do that. But before you start doing that, you need to take photos. Take photos of everything you can, because that's what you're going to show the adjuster is this is what it would look like right after the storm. So do that as much as you can around inside the house and outside your home. Take photos. Now, videos are okay, but photos are better. You want to take the photos, mitigate further damage. You don't have to start necessarily making repairs, but you want to stop further damage, further leaks, make sure the water's gone, start drying out your home. And then, of course, file a claim. You may have 2 claims. You may have to file a claim with your homeowner carrier, and you may have to file a claim with your flood servicing carrier. Okay, so you need to identify both of those. Make sure you contact. You really have plenty of time to file the claim legally, but obviously you want to get it in and get the claim processed and get it going. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Barry. The next one actually is one for Joe. I think you get into a week, 2 weeks, months or so after the storm. There's a lot of things that have to be dealt with. What can we expect from emergency management?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Well, hopefully we're just cleaning up. But as you've heard, things can go bad and we can get some really serious impacts. I just want to be clear that I think Dan will agree, we have not had a landfalling hurricane in Pinellas County since 1921. That'll be 100 years this summer. So everybody says we're due. I don't believe in stuff like that. Dan promises me there's only going to be 2 storms this year. We'll see. It only takes 1. So what we're doing right after, as the captain said, we're doing damage assessment. We're doing all that information. As you saw with that, it took us a while to get enough damages categorized to send up through the state to the federal government to get the SBA declaration. The Small Business Administration does. It sounds like it's all for businesses, but it does help residents, homeowners, and renters as well too. And it's a low interest loan that's available. And if FEMA assistance comes, you really have to apply for that first, and then you'll get into FEMA grants if possible. And that's another claim that you'll have to file besides that if you qualify process. So we're doing the damage assessment. We hope to get the declaration, which turns on the individual assistance and things like that. You're going to come home to your home, and I would say the other pictures you need are the pictures you take today. Take pictures today of the things in your house, what your house looks like, and this way you have the before and after, because you don't want to get into these battles of what was the condition and things like that with your insurance with your insurance carriers and things. You're going to go and assess your home for, another thing the captain has said, what I think is very important too. There may be a curfew. There may be such damages that you're only out here during daylight hours. So you want to come in, take pictures of your damages, do an assessment of the things you need, and throw out any spoiled food and things like that, and clean up as best you can. But you might have to come and leave because there just aren't services here for you to stay in your home. So obey the curfews, if anything, on the Barrier Islands. It's for your safety. And throw out any food. Remember, I talked and the use of a generator. It's you got to use the generator right, as the chief said. So you're running the generator. You didn't get a transfer switch that protects you when the power comes back on. The power comes back on, and they meet in the middle, and that's where we have a lot of fires that happen. So doing that, but also running it outside, away from windows, farther away. If you are using a disconnected generator, use the generator right. And barbecue grills too. I have heard so many people say, because of the winds and things like that, they did it in their garage. Using a barbecue grill inside your home garage is the same thing as running a generator. Carbon monoxide, smoke like that, same thing. I have a barbecue grill and with a little side burner because, if we lost power and things like that, we can cook. When we bring it, we protect it in the garage. When we take it outside after the storm has passed, it's a great asset to have actually for something post-disaster as well. And I talked about the FEMA assistance. That's what having all your paperwork for. And another thing that happens afterwards is a lot of injuries. And unfortunately, I mentioned I was in Bay County. Several people died that they had big pine trees and people were trying to cut them and things like that. And they fell on them and crushed them and things like that. And people fall off roofs all the time, putting up tarps and things post-impact. So be very careful. You can get injured. So many people do get injured post-impact, just repairing their homes and things like that. Either wait for the professionals or use safety equipment and things like that and have assistance, use your ladders right and things like that. And wear gloves and protective eyewear, and just be super careful when you're making repairs. And cinder blocks, holding down a tarp on a roof is a no-no. They should be nailed down, with wood straps. There's a particular way to put on tarps, and you should follow those rules. And there's actually a program from the Army Corps called the Blue Tarp Program, and we try to bring that in. We try to look for all those type of assistance and BOADs and companies that can come in and help as well too. So post-impact, we're looking to do all those things to get assistance to everybody, work with our city partners and things, and bring in folks to help and then to let you know. And how are you going to get our message? If you have no power, everybody's going to get a what? A radio. So we're going to be on 620 and 6:20 a.m. and 7.
What's the
40
FM?
a.m. Yeah, so we're on 2 of them. 6:20 for sure. And that's what we're doing. We're making sure that you have everything that you're entitled to post event.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. We got a question here that actually it's about damage assessment. We're going to direct it to Linda Portel. She's the Community Development Director here at Madeira Beach. And Linda, I believe you're online someplace. I can't.
Yes, I'm on. I'm on some.
Oh, you are?
Here now.
You're right over there. Okay, good. I don't have to look for you. But anyway, you were involved with the assessment after Ada. And can you help us with
Sure.
what people can do to help you, I guess?
And probably what's more important than being community development director out here is that at that moment I was the floodplain manager. Every community has someone who's assigned as your certified floodplain management services. Those people are obligated to get out immediately and start assessing what was the level of damage throughout the community. So if you see somebody walking through the yard measuring water lines on the sides of homes, you know what that's about. Also, the intent is to get out and make sure people know where to go for assistance, try to help them figure out, what their level of damage was, because as we've said several times, it's really important that we collect all of that damage assessment and get it over to the county to help coordinate their efforts in communication with FEMA. The more damage there is in the community at large, the more different types of assistance FEMA can offer us. And so it's really important, not just to you, but to your neighbors, that we all participate in that. I want to reiterate that Joe had a internet form you can fill out that you could access even from your phone, and we'll make sure that you have all that information. Most of your communities, and definitely Pinellas County, have websites that show exactly what you need to do to be prepared, and all the forms that you would need for, making certain kinds of claims or for FEMA assistance, things of that nature. On the Madeira Beach webpage, we have something for you to do every month to keep you actively involved in preparing your property and also being prepared for that assessment. As was stated, it's a good time to get your pictures now and when everything's dry. But also, as you're preparing and doing your assessment and estimating the damages, take pictures as you go, not only for the insurance claims, but because we need them to turn them in to FEMA to prove the damage. And at that almost seems heartless. Madeira Beach took a huge hit during Eta. We had over 400 homes that got wet, at least on the outside, and many had to be torn down. It was really a devastating thing because this community had never experienced anything like that in their recorded history. So to be better prepared for that in the future, we are on our level organizing all of our existing city staff and resources so that we can get out in teams and divide the city up and get as much information on the damage that we can to help out the county and also just to help all the neighbors. You're expected to get the wet stuff out. You don't need permits for that. Go ahead and take the wallboard out, get the fans running, contact your insurance company. But after that, you need to let us know and you need permits. It's really essential that you do licensed contracting work for this repair. People get themselves into all kinds of trouble and make their homes a danger, a hazard to them by jumping into things and jerry-rigging systems or using contractors that aren't licensed. So that's the main thing. Ask the city for help.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you very much. I don't know if we have any written questions or, how about on online? You got oh, you've already input them already. All right, good. Anyway, through all the stages of a hurricane, from preparedness, planning, evacuation, riding out the storms, knowing when to return home and then how to get services to recover from it. There's plenty of information out there to get. The one thing I've been encouraged, and Joe was pushing on me earlier about that, make a plan for how you'll communicate with each other in your business. And it says, fill out the pledge to plan on the county website. I think it's under Pinellas County /emergency, isn't it? Yeah. But it's how you communicate not only with your loved ones and all that, but your business, worship, your place of worship, your schools, whatever you need to communicate with. Print out contacts and phone numbers of people if you don't have them with you. I mean, you need to get, rely on trusted sources of information. When you can't be just looking at word of mouth from your neighbors and stuff like that. It's just not very accurate. But sign up for alert for Pinellas. That's a good one. I get text messages all the time on my phone about that. And use text messaging rather than trying to do voice phone calls or something like that. It takes a lot less wireless capacity to deal with a text message than it does phone, or even you try and send a text with a picture in it, and that's not going to work either. So please do that. Check the weather, be prepared. It's hurricane season, so keep your eye on it. And the beauty of those, as opposed to something like a tornado, is you can see them coming. So you get plenty of time to recover. But anyway, do we have any questions that we need to answer? Oh, what are we looking at? Question number one from the audience. Do you have any advice for boats on lifts that do not have trailers to remove their boats with a hurricane approaching? Chief Chief Burton, he's down there. Which is it Chief Burton we need to ask, or? Chief Bars, yeah. I don't know why they said Burton on here. Oh, he's on Zoom.
I know Chief Burton is on Zoom.
He's on Zoom. I don't have everybody show up.
I am, but I actually have rather limited advice. We appreciate Chief Bars on
Want to
this.
respond to that for us, or?
Can you hear me now?
Hang on just a minute, sir. Let's, can you answer that question about the boat lifts?
For those that don't have the capacity to get the boat out of the water,
Hey, Chief Burton, we're not hearing you. We see you. We see you.
I
speaking,
see you, but I don't
you're
hear you,
muted.
Chief.
If not, I can take it.
please.
Oh, wait. I can't hear you now.
Chief
Say
Barnes,
something,
yeah,
Chief.
to take it.
Trip Bars, go ahead if you can answer it.
We can hear Chief Burton out here on Zoom.
Okay.
I think he wants you to answer it. Chief Burton's muted again, so why don't we,
Okay.
Bars?
Yeah, the question was what to do about a boat you can't get off of.
Yeah,
a
it
boat
says,
lift.
do you have any advice to people on boat lifts that do not have trailers to remove the boats and you have a hurricane approaching?
Yeah, depending on the size of the boat, I mean, if you can get it somewhere else, try to get it to a safe area. If it's got to stay on that lift, possibly move it over the yard if it's a smaller boat, or put some extra lines on it, set the anchor, put the anchor up in your yard. What you don't want is the boat getting free. If you could lash it to a big tree, stern cleat to a big tree and bow cleat to another big tree would be great. Those are just some top of mind things.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, Barry.
Progressive Insurance has a great video and information on how to deal with boats before a storm.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm sure they can find that on the website.
Yes, Progressive Insurance.
We have another question. Sandbags, can we get them weeks in advance? I don't know who I want to, how about Public Works? Megan?
For the city of Madeira Beach, we have sandbags available at all times for Madeira Beach residents only. I would contact your local municipality if you're from our surrounding areas and see if they have sandbags available.
We were handing them out last week at our event in St. Pete Beach, and some people went and picked up a bunch of bags and didn't take any sand because they said we'll fill them when we need to. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I can just touch on sandbags. So for many events, and maybe Edda, sandbags will work, but in a storm surge event where the storm surge is going to be above your windowsills, it's ineffective. And I'd rather you spend your other time protecting yourselves and your pets and doing those type of activities than trying to protect your home with sandbags. It takes so many. You have to do them correctly. You just can't pile them. They have to be set at a certain course and a certain height. And I would just recommend in a storm surge event that you spend your time doing other things, protecting the envelope of your window, your windows and things like that, the envelope of your building.
Okay, we have a question here also on where can people bring their cars when they evacuate the area? Chief Kilpatrick, can you answer that for us?
Probably find some high ground away from trees, away from obstacles. It could be wind driven, away from power lines. Make sure it's on solid ground, something that won't get soft with water, so that you can remove it later on. If you're going to leave it in your home, you want to put it in your garage, you may want to secure your garage door, secure the windows, maybe put sandbags around the door to keep it from blowing. But high ground would be the best. So.
Thank you. Another question here. Who is the immediate point person during a crisis? I don't know. I guess that depends on the municipality and the county for that matter.
Well, the county takes an active role. We have our county PIO, and there's a whole PIO network with all the city PIOs as well too. Our media partners that come to the EOC, and we try to work together. I believe there's some 53 folks on that network of agencies and the cities, and we try to be on the same message, making sure that all the residents get the latest information and the correct information. So there is a whole public information, PIO, public information officers network that get together and try to communicate about the disaster that we're.
Thank you, Joe. We have a question here for registering for a special needs shelter, and I'd like to direct that one to Chief Graham from Clearwater. I see he's on here somewhere. He's muted, but Chief, can you? Oops, let's see things move. There he is.
Hello, how are you doing?
I can't hear him here, but
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Jamal.
Okay, good. I know there's a lot of feedback. So with the special needs shelter, one of the things that's been reiterated through this whole meeting is making sure you have a plan and doing things early. At the time of the event, it's the worst time to try and do anything, and it's the worst time to try and get special needs sheltering or even register for special needs shelter. So do it early, register early through the county. And then by doing that, what will happen is they'll send your registration to the local fire department, and that fire department will confirm and see if there's any additional needs from the person who needs that actual transportation. So once you register early. The fire departments will try and contact you. For the city of Clearwater, we've contacted early already. And then before an event comes, we'll contact you again to make sure that you actually do want that transportation. Now, to get transportation, when you register, we have routing programs. The county has routing programs, and certain departments have routing programs that work in conjunction with the county systems. What they'll do is they'll pick you up and take you to an applicable shelter. And they will also, through the same routing program, take you back home if it is available or if it's even accessible to get to your home. And one thing that I know I've heard Joe speak about at times and through the county, as part of your planning, you do need to make sure you can plan to spend a couple days at a shelter, up to 7 days at some places, and also try and look to having a host home for those times when you cannot get back to your home. Because if you're living on a barrier island, it's usually gotten there by a bridge. And a lot of times if those bridges have to be looked at because of damage or whatever else, you could be gone for a couple weeks, depending on how soon they can come and survey and look at those access areas. So have a plan, do it early, register early through the system so that you're not getting lost in the system, that you're actually part of the system and part of the plan to get you off the island.
Mayor, we cannot hear you. You'll need to unmute.
okay. We have the question is, are the bridges left in a locked position? And I guess Chief Burton's the one that we're supposed to direct that question.
Lisa, can you hear me?
Let's see if we've got.
I can hear you.
Not sure if he can
I don't know if he
respond,
can or
but I
not.
can speak to that if you'd like.
Okay, please.
So my understanding is the Department of Transportation actually locks them in the down position to prevent damage from the bridges, or from the storm, so that the cars can evacuate over the bridges. So if you are trying to move that boat, you're likely to have a difficult time if you need a bridge opening. But it really helps with the evacuation of the vehicles and allows us to get back on the islands to the bridges, because the bridges have a less chance of being damaged when they're locked down.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense to me. Yeah. And I think it's much more important we get people off the island than it is for somebody to move their boat. So another question also, power company, do they shut the power off? And I guess Chief Clint, where is he? Oh, there he is.
Checking out.
Hey, how's everybody? No, Duke does not shut off the power. What we advise is, especially during flood waters, to flip your main breaker. Don't allow the transfer switch. If you do have a generator, don't allow the transfer switch to engage. You have to keep the power off. It's dangerous if you flip the main breaker, but then you allow the generator to kick on, and it defeats the whole purpose. And that's during floods, of course. During wind-driven events, it's fine to utilize your electricity or your generator if you're fortunate enough to have one. But yeah, if there is a flooding, definitely flip the main breaker.
Okay, thank you. We have another question here to asking, and this is directed to Chief Graham. How do you register for a pet shelter?
So you register to the county. They have that the access to Pinellas County's emergency management website. A lot of the shelters will be listed as to what they will accept at those shelters. Pre-registration is the key. Now, when it comes down to right before the event, and I know Joe and from emergency management, who they directly are the ones who are responsible for designating which shelters are which, they don't turn anyone away right before the storm. So, but it is better to know which shelter is accessible for pet friendly, because that's the one you would like to go to if you're in an evacuation area. But register through the county is the way to do it.
Muted again. Thank you, Chief. We don't have any more questions that's showing up on here. So I think what we'd like to do is, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for hanging in there with us with the technical problems. We have one from the audience. We do. Is there somebody that wanted? No? Okay.
I have relatives in Florida. It's up to us to find out. I know the evacuation now. Wonderful map, guys. There are places on this map, but there's no evacuation. So we find a place in there to go when it's time to evacuate, or is it up to us to go somewhere? Preparedness. How is this done? What if we didn't have any relatives here? Where the heck would we go?
That's a great question. So the gentleman was asking where is looking at the evacuation map that's in our hurricane guide and seeing that there's non-evac zones that are available there. And those are zones there that where there's no storm surge, and there could be hotels there that have rooms available, and you'd have to make arrangements with that. You know, or find a friend or family that, if possible, that you can go to, and not having that, then you know, a hotel would be your best option there. We have shelters that are open for everybody, but you know, those are not the most pleasant conditions. It's hard ground, and you got to come in there with 1,000 of your best friends you've never met before, and hunker down. And yes, we'll feed you. We have food and water, and if you need it, we want you to come to a shelter. There's 2 pet-friendly shelters, and there's 3 special needs. So you can make use of that as well too. But you know, you should think about that ahead of time. Now, where would you go? How far would you need to go to get there, and how soon should you need to leave as well? So that's a great question, because those are the considerations that you need to make at a personal level to see where would I go and what would I do.
Joe, I'll add on to that.
And then if not, we have shelters available that are on the map, and not all shelters open at all levels. So please look at PinellasCounty.org emergency, and we'll show you which shelters are open, and local media will be broadcasting that as well too. In this COVID environment, we're using more of them so that we do some social distancing, but you know, you need to check which ones are open.
Joe, I'll add on to that quickly too, to look at the flood zones as well.
Yeah, right. You dealt with tornadoes, Kansas.
Well, I think that's a very good point. Like we said earlier, that you go on the county website, the emergency department piece of it, and you know, create a plan, sign up for make your plan, set up. But that's the whole idea, is have a plan. Don't be looking at, you know, we're going to have a hurricane in 2 days, and what do I do now? You know, you need to know now really what will happen. Hopefully never happen, but if it happens in July, August, September, October, and since you're new here, September is the peak of our hurricane season here. So yeah, that's the peak. Yeah, it starts, the season starts, in the 1st of June, but it isn't over till the end of November, or it's supposed to be, but I don't think Mother Nature knows that yet. Yeah, yeah, that's right. But anyway, one thing I would encourage everybody to continue to get your questions answered by your own community, the people in your city. Look for preparedness events. We had one in St. Pete Beach last Saturday, and we're giving out free life vests, even, which, like I said, avoid the water, but the last minute you need a life vest, you need one. So we were giving out sandbags, life vests. There was a lot of information there. The emergency management people from Pinellas County were there as well. So there was a lot of things to learn. You'll get an email with a link to the video here, and there's also going to be, I believe, a link that you can fill out a survey. So please give the county some feedback. I want to thank them, particularly the emergency management department, for doing this in general. It's I think very welcome, particularly here on the Barrier Islands. I mean, we basically live on elaborate sandbars, and when the water starts coming in, you have a tough time. So. Anyway, I also want to thank the city of Madeira Beach for hosting this, and I don't know if everybody heard it in the beginning because of our technical difficulties, but we had a panelist with Dan Noah, who was on Zoom. He was from National Weather Service. Joe Burry's here from Pinellas County Emergency Management. Lisa Foster, who is also on Zoom. She's the floodplain administrator for the county. I want to thank her. Barry Scar from the insurance aspect, and certified risk management specialist. Our fire chief from St. Pete Beach, Jim Kilpatrick. Thank you so much for being here. Police Captain Glenn Smith from Indian Shores, and Megan Weffer from Public Works here in Madeira Beach. So thank you all for being part of this, and thank you to all the guest speakers we had. I've got a list of them here someplace, and I can't remember who we talked to, who we didn't, but thanks again, and I think is in a re-entry tag. I think that's a question. So we still got a bunch of people on Zoom. We got another 50 or so people listening in, which they probably can't hear him, I don't think. Can they? Anyway, but yeah, I think you're talking about re-entry tags for getting, I assume, is that true? Yeah, okay. All right, well, you've got to get those from the sheriff's department, I think handles all of it. We use the sheriff for our police force. So we also, when we had our own police force, but they switched over to the sheriff for the tags because they handle the Barrier Islands. If you live on a Barrier Island, a re-entry tag is going to be registered with the sheriff, and that's what you need for your vehicles.
Right. And Barrier Island residents can go to their local cities as well too and pick up those hang tags. And yes, it's 2 per residence and 4 per business, I believe. You get a couple more, but you need to register and pick those up ahead of time. That's a great thing to have. It helps with security and helps with reentry.
Well, I guess that being said, we are a little over time, but I think we'll be forgiven. So thank you all for participating. Thank you all panelists, our guest speakers. Michael, it was eye-opening at times. So please enjoy, be safe, stay out of the water, and keep an eye on the news and make sure you know when a hurricane's coming. So thank you very much, everybody.